How can one make sure that they have not become an accidental Pharisee? Get your coffee. Once upon a time, the term Pharisee had a relatively positive connotation, at least among those of the Jewish religion. Those within Judaism that were identified as Pharisees were considered to be some of the most faithful adherents to the Jewish law and the rabbinical traditions. At the time of Christ, Pharisees were considered by many to be the righteous ones. They certainly were among the most religious, and they made quite a show of their religiosity. When they were fasting, others knew it. When they gave to the poor, they announced their charity. When they prayed, they did so publicly and loudly. Jesus probably shocked his hearers when he taught, "Unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven." In other words, unless you are more righteous than the most religious, you don't have a chance. At least that's how his hearers would have probably heard that at the moment when he taught it, even if there was much more to the meaning of what he was saying. But the times in which Pharisee had a relatively positive connotation are well behind us. In fact, it has probably been a long time since Pharisee had a positive connection at all, in many ways since the time and teaching of Christ. Pharisee has come to be synonymous with self-righteousness and hypocrisy because sadly, many of those that were among the hyper-religious sect of the Pharisees were self-righteous and hypocritical. They appeared good, moral, outstanding, and righteous before men on the outside, but it was just a show. It was merely skin deep, just a veneer. As a result, Jesus would say, "Beware of the leavening hypocrisy of the Pharisees, and woe to those that cleanse the outside of the cup or the dish, but inside they are full of extortion and self-indulgence. You," he would say to them, "are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead men's bones and full of uncleanness." And in the same way, you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Jesus would say, "Do not be like them." Now, it is unlikely that you, if you are a Christian, want to be numbered among the Pharisees. I don't think any follower of Christ sets out to be numbered among them, but it is entirely possible that we can be found accidentally among their ranks. Certainly many non-Christians look at Christians and at the church as a whole and say the church is full of hypocrites. And when they do, we can't much argue with them because we've had our share of very high-profile hypocrites, even recently. So how can we guard from becoming accidental Pharisees? How can we beware of such hypocrisy and not be like them, in accordance with the teaching of Jesus? Or how can you know that you might have become an accidental Pharisee? Jesus in the Gospel of Luke tells a story that gives some insight into some of the answers to those questions. In fact, Luke says that Jesus spoke this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and they despised others. It's found in Luke chapter 18, where Jesus says this: "Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, 'God, I thank you that I'm not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I possess.' Now the tax collector, standing afar off, would not so much as raise his eyes to heaven, but he beat his chest, saying, 'God, be merciful to me, a sinner.' Jesus says, 'I tell you the truth, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted.'" 3 ways to test whether or not you may have drifted into Pharisaism. First, you trust in your good works, as if your good works are that which make you good. Second, you think that your ritual observances are more important than God's mercy and grace. And third, you look down upon and despise others as if their apparent lack of goodness proves that you are in fact good. One of the most well-known Pharisees of all time, after being humbled out of his Pharisaism, he wrote, "For we dare not class ourselves or compare ourselves with those that commend themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise." Something to think about. We'll see you next time.